He's gonna die. He's gonna fight me. He's something like me. He thinks he's awesome.
Hey everybody, this is Santorini. Now Santorini, if you actually Google that, is the name for an island that used to be called Thera, that was destroyed about 3,600 years ago in a giant volcanic eruption called the Minoan eruption. So if you want to read some background about this, I invite you to go ahead and check that out. It is also what many people think is the origination of the lost city of Atlantis as well. So some good reading, some good investigation if you want to go ahead and check that out. However, that is not this. Santorini is a pretty awesome abstract-ish board game where each player is going to represent themselves as a god. They have two workers on the island and they're trying to build these awesome 3D buildings that look like this. And they come in these three different parts. And they put these together, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to get their worker up onto the top level of one of these three-story buildings so they can win the game. But to prevent people, and this is kind of cool as well, you can actually have a fourth level to the thing. You put one of these little domes on there, and that prevents somebody from winning by putting the dome on top. Now the game just pops, it looks amazing, but it also is one of these games that has one of the smallest rule sets you'll ever run across ever. You can teach the game. It says learn the game in 30 seconds. I've taught the game several times. It takes about 5 minutes or whatever for people to like kind of grok the game a little bit and understand what they're doing. But it is a very, very quick and simple game to teach. I was able to teach my young daughter how to play the game in about the same amount of time it took anybody else. And it is a very, very fun and challenging game to win. I'm not very good at this game. I don't win very often. But that's okay, because when I do win, it feels like a pretty big accomplishment, right? So anyway, so let me show you how Santorini is played and how it looks, and then we'll come back here and I'll talk a little more about why I think this game is an absolute winner. All right, cool, let's do that. This is Santorini, and this is a very high-level prototype that was sent to me. My understanding is that the pieces of this were actually 3D printed, and so like when the game actually is produced, they should be of this quality or even better. And these are pretty amazing looking pieces. These are the pieces that you'll be putting together to build these cool three-story buildings like so, that if you get your worker on top of one, you will win the game. That's how you win. Well, technically that's normally how you win. Some of the different gods, which are on these cards over here, which I'll explain in a little bit, might have different ways of winning, or a more complex way of winning, if you will. So, but for the most part, getting one of your workers up to the third floor is how you win. You can put a little cap on the top of these, and that prevents somebody from actually climbing up there. Apparently it's too slippery and slidey, and then they fall off and don't fall to their doom, so to speak. But you just can't move up to the third floor. That's a way that players will play the game and will block somebody from winning in that case. So the game is played fairly straightforward. You have two things you will do on each one of your turns. You will move one of your workers on this board in any direction. They can move both orthogonally and diagonally, as long as it's a legal move, which I'll explain in just a moment. And then you have to build a section of building in a spot next to the worker that you move. Now, that might change a little bit, once again, with the different rules of each god, but that is the basic rules of the game. You are going to move them all about this little grid here, and hopefully you can maneuver your workers into position where eventually when it's your turn, you'll be able to move from a second floor to a third floor and then be able to win the game. The trick here is obviously you are moving and then building. So you are in a situation where you can build the third floor and then move and step up into that spot. So you're kind of like, think of chess. You're putting yourself into check where you can win, and then the other player has a chance to try to block that and prevent you from actually winning the game. And then, so what you're trying to do is basically maneuver yourself into a situation where it isn't a check, it's a checkmate, where the other player has nothing they can do that can actually prevent you from winning the game at that point. So at the beginning of the game, what happens, and I'm not going to explain these just yet, but what's going to happen is you're going to be dealt 4 of these God cards, each player, and then they're going to pick one, and that's going to be their special ability that they have for the rest of the game. Then, starting with the first player, they're going to take both of their workers and they're going to place them anywhere on this board. They can place them next to each other on 2 different spots. They can place them as far away as they can. They don't have to be on the corners or anything like that. So you can go like here and here. And then the other player would go, maybe they're going to go here and, here. And that's completely valid. Depending on what the person's strategy is or what they're planning on doing, that's what they'll do. And then each person will take their turn. So like if the first person goes, they'd move direction like that, and now they're going to take one piece and they're going to build that section of the board there. Now the other person's going to go, maybe they move here, and they're going to build back here. And so now the next player could, if they wanted to, they could move up 1 level, and then they could build another 4th level section right there. And so now the game's going to just go back and forth, as I said, until somebody manages to figure out a way to win. So let's just keep going here just for fun. And I'm obviously not going to play this very strategically, but here, let's do this. So, and they build a 2nd level up like so. So now, there's a taller building, but you still need to get that 3rd level up there. And so now the other player goes, maybe they're going to move this one over here and then build another section like so. I'm just doing this randomly almost at this point, so let's step over here and build up a 2nd level. Now, this is, as I said, this is kind of a no-frills way of playing the game. I'm not using any of my special God powers to play it right this time because I'm going to explain this a little bit. But I did play this way with my daughter before we introduced the God cards into the game, and we still had a great deal of fun figuring out how to do this. So each person, eventually what's going to happen is, and I forgot to mention, if you are at a spot like here, normally you can only move up 1 level, so you can't go from like the bottom level and climb up to the 2nd level like so. However, a valid move is climbing down 2 levels. And in fact, one of the gods actually can win that way if they actually are able to climb down 2 levels. So it's another way that a player can win, and so you have to try to block that. So if I was that god that could win by climbing down 2 levels, like I'd be like, and I'd be in a situation here where I'd be in trouble. Let's just, here, I'll do this just to kind of give myself a chance here. But say I was playing against the player that had that ability, and so I'd be, and I was here, you'd like move there to block that, and then you'd build another section like so, and so they wouldn't be able to climb down 2 levels to win the game in that function. So then that's how like a lot of this game works, is you are always going to be trying to navigate yourself into a spot where you are imminently possible to win. Maybe not the next move, but a kind of a like thinking 2 or 3 moves ahead to pull off the win in that situation. Now, very, very rarely are you ever going to have a moment where you're going to win early on in the game. Even though this game doesn't take a long time to play, the problem you have is that because you're doing the move and then the build, you aren't in a situation, as I said, to like win immediately. You're always allowing the other player a chance to win. So if you did something like this, and then you move there and built there, the next player could, move there, and they could possibly, build in this situation. But you can prevent that very easily by just moving back down there and taking one of these domes and placing it and like a cap on the top. And so even though the next player had that possibility of getting up to there and being able to do it, because of the fact that you can build in any one of the directions, and you don't have to be like on the same level or anything like that, you can prevent people very easily. But what you're going to end up doing is that you would set yourself up in such a way where you would have another worker blocking that spot right there. And because then, if that particular dome wasn't on top of there, and you were building that, you then would have a situation, because this worker was here and because that worker was there, this player wouldn't have any options, because they wouldn't be able to move into a spot that would allow them to then build in that location. Because if they move there, they're too far away, and so on and so forth, and they can't move up to there themselves, and they have to actually move and then build, and then they can't move this worker. And so then, when the next turn comes, you're in a situation where the person could climb up to the top level and win the game. Now, as I said, that game, that straightforward, is still very fun, and it was a great way for me to learn how to play the game, and it was a great way for me to teach the game to my daughter. But when you add in the special powers of the gods, that's when the game kind of opens up and, you know, leaves the abstract world behind to a certain level and kind of opens itself up to these different rules that break the rules of the game, if you will. So, like, take Atlas, for example. This little symbol down here basically says that Atlas can build a cap on any level of the board. So, in this situation, like, if you had somebody that was, you know, like, you wanted to prevent somebody from even climbing up to, like, a level 2 spot, Atlas could build a dome on that spot instead of only a level 3, and so they can use that ability. I'll get to Gaia here in just a second, but Artemis, their worker, when they move, can move twice instead of just once. So you have extra mobility if Artemis is your god. Let me see here. Demeter has the ability to build twice on their turn, and they build in 2 separate spots. So, like, if a Demeter moves, you would just move to this location, and then they could build like this, you know, and so they could build 2 locations, and Demeter then obviously is going to have more options as far as being able to build up that little staircase action, if you will, or also to extra blocks. So if you have like a couple of levels that are 3rd level, they could build 2 of these domes on top of those. Aphrodite is an interesting god. This down here means that if a player has their worker beginning of the turn next to the Aphrodite's worker, when they end their turn, they have to be next to an Aphrodite worker as well, because you're in love and you don't want to be far apart from them. It's one of those, like, so that, you know, obviously adds another level to the game, because if that was the case on this board, here, like, put that one there, and, you know, this one here. So if this was Aphrodite and this was my worker, I'd have pretty much open movement with this one because I'm not next to an Aphrodite worker. But because of the fact that, you know, the Aphrodite worker is next to this one, I would have, my only options for movement would be this, you know, like, I wouldn't be able to move to this location in the corner here for any reason, because I wouldn't be next to an Aphrodite worker at the end of my turn. So it just adds, you know, a certain complexity to your options as far as where you can move. I do apologize. I believe earlier I said Dionysus had the ability, if they climb down 2 levels, they win the game. But that actually is Pan's ability. If Pan climbs down 2 levels, they win the game. Dionysus' ability, actually, and the god, if you're unfamiliar, the god of wine and drinking, Dionysus has the ability, after they build a dome, they're allowed to take another turn as the other player, using that player's ability of their god instead of Dionysus themselves. Athena has a pretty cool ability. When Athena climbs up a level, no one else can climb up a level until the player who is Athena has their next turn. So you can actually then limit a lot of movement as well. Ares has the ability, after they move, the worker they didn't move can destroy the topmost level of any building that is around that worker. And just like one more, Gaia, which is a god that was unlocked recently in the Kickstarter, you get to start with 4 workers, and so you have a lot more workers out there running around doing their thing, but you only win when you actually manage to get 2 of those 3 workers up to the 3rd level instead of just 1. So there's a lot of different gods with a lot of different abilities. I invite you to go over to the Kickstarter and look at all of the ones that have been unlocked so far. You know, I'm not a fan of abstracts. This is something I'll touch on in my conclusion. But there's something about this one that is non-abstracty, if you will. You know, I found this game to be an absolute delight. Gavin, the gentleman who sent me the game, actually referenced. He said I think he thought this would be a great game for me to play with my daughter, and he was absolutely correct. This is a wonderful game that I've played with my daughter now several times. She and I enjoyed it a great deal, and like I said, you don't have to play with these, but and it was a great way to learn the game. But as I said, once we got into it and understood how the game meant, we turned to these, and it basically opened the entire game up to different levels of complexity and strategy as well. But let me talk about all of that in my conclusion, which I'll do right now. Alright, thank you very much for learning how to play Santorini, so you should have a pretty good idea of how the game is played. And as I said, I do invite you to go ahead and check out the Kickstarter page so you can actually see, not so much how to play the game, but also just see a listing of all the different gods that they have, the god cards, I should say, that they now have expanded to with the great success of the Kickstarter, and also so you can go ahead and check out each one of those and see how you maybe formulate some strategies in your head for when you finally get this game and put it on your table, and you can have an idea of how to play the game. So, all that being said, as I said, I am not a big abstract guy. I need there to be something in it. I do realize that there are a lot of Euro cube pushes out there where the theme is completely interchangeable, but at least there's like a theme, right? So there's a lot of abstracts out there. People say, oh, this is amazing, and you're going to move this little ring over here, and you move this little ball over here, and you move this little wall there or something, and I'm just like, oh, fine, whatever, it's cute, but, I don't want to play checkers anymore. I was in the chess club when I was in junior high. I don't want to play an abstract anymore. I want there to be some sort of theme. I want to be, building brown cubes and turning them into silver cubes or something. I want there to be something to the game that I'm playing. When I was told about this game and described about this game, I was tentatively curious, but I also was very evident about the possibility that this wouldn't be something that was going to hit on all cylinders for me, just because of the fact that I am not an abstract fan. Now, how wrong I was. Gavin Brown, the person that runs Roxley Games, he suggested that I, learn the game and play it with my daughter first, and that was like an excellent suggestion that he made, because when I got this sent to me, we cracked her open, but from Richard Ham, mind you. Thank you, Richard. When it got to me from Malta, my daughter and I, we cracked it open, and we learned and we studied and we figured out how to play the game together the day that I got it. And of course, my younger son came over and started monkeying with these things, and he wanted to build little towers, which is fine. It entertained him, and we were doing our thing as well. But I mean, it was one of those things where it was a marvelous moment that I'm going to remember for a long time, just because of the fact that I got to explore the game very first time ever with Rylan, my third grade daughter, and we had this fantastic moment of having the strategies and realizing what you had to do to prevent the other person from winning while still trying to put yourself in a position to win. And the references I made to chess or whatever as I was explaining how the game was played, I think are apt. But I felt myself actually really feeling like I was playing, if you've played the game Corridor, which is a game where you are attempting to move your peg from one side of the board to the other. And you both have these pegs, and you have the option of either putting a wall down or moving your peg. And so, that's your entire turn. So you just pick one of those actions, and you go ahead. And so you can move towards the victory, or you can put blockades to try to prevent the other player from attaining what they're trying to attempt to do. And so I kind of felt like that playing this game. So you have the ability to build something, possibly to push yourself towards victory, or you have the option to do something to try to mess with the other player. And the spatial aspect of the game is very, very important. You want to be able to put your workers in a position where they are able to have the freedom of movement to kind of move around and to get into the other player's way, while at the same time, putting themselves in a position where they are able to still assist you to win. I mean, it's kind of tough to explain in words here, but when you first play the game and you sit down and play it, and this is a game where you could easily build this with a few pennies and quarters or whatever, and make a grid on a piece of graph paper, and you could try it out yourself. You wouldn't obviously have what you have in front of me, but I mean, it's out there, and you could then play it and goof around with it with your friends. And I invite you to do that, because I think it would actually open the game up to you and give you a much greater understanding of how the game is played. I mean, just literally take like a quarter, a nickel, a penny, and a dime. And those are your 4 levels, and then just make the grid and go at it, and you'll see that this is something, that old saying of like, minutes to learn but a lifetime to master. I mean, it is something that each time you play it, depending upon which god you have, which god you're facing, and your strategy and the evolvement, the way you've learned the game and the way you've learned how to play the game is going to evolve and change with each and every play that you have. And so a strategy that you had before might be beneficial, but it might not be good enough to win the next game. And so you have to change that up and learn something new. And the best thing about this game for me so far was that, and I played it against my wife, and I played it against my friends and what have you, but the best thing about this game was after we got done playing for the very first time, my daughter beat me. And then she said, let's play it again. And so then we played it again. And then we got done with that one, and she beat me again. And so then I said, hey, let's go ahead and finally add these cards, and we'll play. And she said, yeah, let's play it again. And then when I add the cards, I was able to win, and I felt pretty good. But then my daughter once again said, let's play again. And she played with the same god. She had Artemis, and she beat me again. And so it's one of those things where my daughter, I was able to see the little tumblers and the gears clicking around in her brain, and I was able to see the sheer happiness and excitement in her eyes when she realized that she had put her dad in a position where there was nothing I could do to stop her from achieving victory. And so that, besides the game just being fun and being awesome and being just, in a lot of ways, kind of mind-blowing, it has given me that personal gaming experience that, nobody can ever take away from me. So I appreciate that a great deal about Santorini. So there you go. If you have any questions about the game, please ask away. I'll be happy to answer those to the best of my ability. As always, I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. And until next time, this was me, the Undead Viking, and I'm telling you to have yourself one heck of an awesome day. All right, bye-bye.